Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. It's been a celebratory day for Republicans as a big piece of the Trump 2.0 agenda has passed the House, now heading to the president's desk, expected to be signed into law tomorrow. To put this bill in perspective, we're bringing in Javier Palomarez, founder and CEO of the United States Hispanic Business Council, and Christian Briggs, economist and CEO of Hard Asset Management. Thank you both so much for joining us. Good to see you both. Now, Christian, this bill meets the self-imposed July 4th deadline with only 2 Republican noes in the end. What does this mean for Trump's agenda?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show, but it's a big win. One of the things that we were looking at from the big, beautiful bill is it's not only a transformational for American economy, but it's ensuring that the working class Americans will be able to get the tax cuts they need. So this is a huge win for President Trump. And I think it speaks a lot for the Republican Party in general.
And Javier, this bill makes Trump's 2017 tax cuts permanent, gives tax breaks on tips, and makes significant changes to Medicaid, including a work requirement. What does this mean for the economy?
You know, I have to agree with Christian. This is a big win. I've been spending a lot of time the last few days talking to my friends on the Hill. It runs the gamut. But the net effect from an economic and a business perspective, this is great news. You know, I spent some time with Bernie Moreno, for example, Republican senator from Ohio. Bernie is delighted that, no tax on tips is included on this, no tax on overtime. It raises the child tax deduction. It doesn't put any more tax burden on the American family. It invests in immigration and border security. And something that I've been working on, our team's been working on quite a bit, is the fact that it reinstates the R&D tax write-off for companies involved in technology and innovation, which is a big win for the American small business community. Delighted with what we're seeing so far from a business perspective.
And Christian, talk to us about what specific parts of the bill will encourage economic growth the most.
Okay, well, I'm agreeing with Javier. I mean, this bill is huge. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things it really directs home to, especially the working family. You've got up to 7.2 million jobs that have been protected and created, and 1 million new jobs annually by small businesses that this is going to help. What I really like about this is how it helps the typical family. Somewhere between 10 and maybe 11,000 in additional take-home pay for the average family. That's huge. Workers are going to see an increased wages of up to about $7,200, the last I read, and looking at kind of the perspective on no tax on tips. That's massive. Overtime pay. Tax relief for seniors will be put more money annually in Americans' pockets. But I think what really helps a lot is it locks in and further boosts the double child tax credit to $2,200, as my colleague said there, for more than 40 million American families. I like this bill a lot because it puts America first, it puts American workers first, and more importantly, it really puts forth an effort to try to secure the borders, which has been a lot of problems, as everybody knows. The cost of illegal immigration is just too astronomical. We just can't afford that right now.
Now, Javier, a big focus was on Medicaid. The bill does require some Americans to work if they want to receive certain government benefits. How will that impact the workforce and the economy as a whole?
Again, as I mentioned, I've been speaking to my friends on the Hill. By way of example, Henry Cuellar, Democrat from Texas. The cuts to Medicaid in his mind are too aggressive. That puts some 12 million Americans at risk of losing the benefits. The healthcare programs, as well as SNAP programs, the cuts there are aggressive. That puts some 3 million families at risk. So there's no doubt that there's going to be some impact on certain segments of the American population. But a bill of this stature, of this size, in an environment and an economy as complicated and as big as ours, no one party is going to get the panacea that they're looking for. There had to be some puts and takes. Unfortunately, there are some cuts that are aggressive in areas like again, SNAP, Medicare, Medicaid. But I'm hopeful that the economic boom that can come from this will help get people employed, get people moving again, get the economy moving, and hopefully make up for some of those, kind of negative aspects of the bill. But the net effect, and certainly from a small business perspective, and as you know, we advocate on behalf of 4.5 million American small businesses. So as far as our organization, our association is concerned, this is an historic opportunity. There's great news here for the American small business community. Look, at the end of the day, the American small business, we just want an administration that understands our challenges. We want an environment where we can continue to plan, continue to grow the jobs, continue to pay the taxes. And this is an absolute step in that direction. We're delighted with what we're seeing from the business aspect of this bill.
And Christian, expanding on what Javier mentioned there, reports say those who benefit include corporate America, high-income individuals and manufacturers. Those on the short end include low-income Americans, hospitals, and fiscal hawks. How are you reading this, and who will and won't benefit?
Well, what you're saying, there is some truth in what you're saying. You're going to see the higher up, wealthier people benefit a lot more in some sense from the tax relief. That's no question. But because of that, they have a tendency to spend more. So as we know, the small business is the heartbeat of America. It's the bedrock of the economy. So what I'm looking for, and I believe this to be true, and disagree or agree, but when you have the expansion of wealth in the top 5, 10, 15% of America, they have a preponderancy to expand their businesses. They have a way of which now to get more incentives, especially in the manufacturing. If I was a local manufacturer on domestic level or international looking to manufacture here in the U.S., with the dollar down right now, this is a perfect time to bring your business to America. And number two, to be able to manufacture goods in an environment where you have great talent, great labor force, and you have a tax incentivized economy and a tax incentivized president who's saying, look, you come to America, you want to do business with us, we're here to do business with you. We will make it, and we will make it so easy for you to say yes to manufacturing. And I believe the GDP is going to be on rocket ship next year. I think what's going to happen is we're going to see that high income earners double down on manufacturing. It's going to lift the bottom half of America, and that's what it's all about. And I agree with what Javier said. There's just some challenges in the bill. No bill is going to be perfect. For somebody to say, oh, it fit both sides of the aisles, that's naive. But this bill overall, 75 to 80% is good for America. It's good for the American worker. It's going to be good for long-term manufacturing. And that's what's going to raise our GDP.
And Javier, I want to dig into the small business aspect, as the leading small business lobbying group, the National Federation of Independent Business, praised the bill, calling it historic legislation that would provide permanent tax relief for 33 million small businesses. Talk to us about what this bill's passage means for small business in America and more broadly Americans.
I mean, you can imagine, I agree with everything Christian just said. At the end of the day, the American small business community creates nearly 70% of net new jobs in this nation. It's not the big corporations. Mm-hmm. It's the small, Main Street, family-owned businesses. Those are the ones that are creating the net new jobs in this country. And an administration that understands that and is passing legislation that will help us to continue to do that, that is wonderful news for us. Look, at the end of the day, the American people were loud and clear. They voted for Donald Trump because his message resonated with them. He ran on a mandate. And on the 165th day of his presidency, that being tomorrow, he's going to deliver on a very large part of that mandate. This is an historic opportunity for the American small business community. And I got to tell you, we're delighted with what we're seeing so far.
And Christian, zooming out a bit here, one of the Republican no's was Thomas Massie, who's a fiscal hawk. Is this bill fiscally responsible?
It is fiscally responsible because here's why. There are mechanisms within the bill that will increase the GDP to a level that will overcome any of the deficit spending that will actually, by year 3, start to actually pay down the debt. What President Trump is trying to do is to get us to about $6 trillion in top line revenue, which is the tax collection number. If we can get to $6 trillion in top line revenue and we can cut spending by $1 trillion per year, he's basically got us to what Clinton did with Newt Gingrich, where they were able to systematically bring together both parties' bipartisan budgets and have a surplus of about $200 billion. I truly believe, after looking at the bill and doing as much analytics as I could, if the GDP is successful in the way Trump is looking at it, and the manufacturing does everything we hope to do, and with the dollar continuing to go down, believe it or not, that's a big plus right now for the United States for manufacturing to be more competitive, then this bill by year 3 or 4 will become, as what Scott Bessent said, this economy will be on rocket ship turbochargers. We can outrun the debt by increasing the GDP. I like the bill. I like what Javier is saying. This is a huge win for small businesses, because without small businesses, there really is no middle America. Small businesses are the heartbeat, and again, I'll say it again, the bedrock of the American economy.
And Javier, your thoughts on if this bill is fiscally responsible?
You know, I think it really boils down to, listen, a lot of whether this becomes, it's feasible, is it responsible? A lot of that responsibility will really depend on the execution and what comes next. That it is a gamble, that there's no question. But again, Donald Trump ran on a mandate. This is the mandate. He is now taking that next and very critical next step in delivering on that mandate. Are there risks? Absolutely. But again, with an economy as large, as complicated as ours, there is nothing that can be done that wouldn't be complicated. It was time for a different approach. As a Democrat, I have to admit that this has some elements in it that make me very hopeful, particularly from a small business perspective, that we can now rely on an administration that understands our challenges, that is willing to meet us more than halfway and help us continue to invest, pay the taxes, grow the economy, create the jobs, and move our nation forward. I'm happy with what I'm seeing so far. It's in the execution that's yet to come, but I'm very hopeful that we're going to get it right this time. I'm really delighted with what I'm seeing.
Javier Palomarez, Christian Briggs, thank you both so much for joining us.